Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Canadian Institute for Public Safety Research and Treatment's Town Hall Series presented by COVID-19 Readiness Resource Project. My name is Emily Cossack, and I am the Knowledge Manager at CIPSRT. For today's Town Hall, we have partnered with Correctional Service Canada to speak about self-care during times of crisis and change. Before the presentation, I would like to welcome Correctional Service Canada's Commissioner, Anne Kelly, to begin our Town Hall. Commissioner, go ahead.
Okay, great. Well, it's really nice to be with you all, although I can't see you. I know you're out there. I'll just start by saying every day I really feel privileged to serve as the commissioner of our organization, despite these times of uncertainty. And as I always say, an organization is nothing without its people and without its healthy people. And this statement is even more true when it comes to working in correctional environment, and especially during these times. We cannot help our colleagues, employees, the offenders under our responsibilities if we're not looking after ourselves first. So I'm honored to use the opportunity of the Steering Committee for Workplace Mental Health Injuries for CSC to co-chair this webinar on self-care strategies for CSC personnel with the Canadian Institute for Public Safety Research and Treatment. Individual health, which leads to healthy workplace health and wellness, is key to the success of our organization. We've seen an increase in initiatives that focus on psychological health and safety in the workplace. So for example, in 2007, the Mental Health Commission of Canada was created by our federal government. In 2013, it introduced the National Standard for Psychological Health and Safety in the Workplace, a voluntary set of guidelines, tools, and resources focused on promoting employee psychological health. In 2016, the Government of Canada adopted the Federal Public Service Workplace Mental Health Strategy, an important step in the government's efforts to build a healthy, respectful, and supportive work environment. In 2019, we all welcome the Minister of Public Safety's launch of an action plan to support Canada's public safety personnel in dealing with post-traumatic stress injuries that helps keep our employees healthy and resilient. Finally, earlier this year, in recognition that we must do a better job of addressing post-traumatic stress injuries and the mental wellness of public safety personnel, the government released its action plan on post-traumatic stress injuries, supporting research, prevention, early intervention, stigma reduction, care, and treatment for all public safety personnel, including correctional employees. As we live through these uncertain times more than ever, it is time to identify cases of psychological distress early so they can receive referral, support, and management. To develop and promote initiatives, tools, and resources aligned with current and future needs for promoting health, wellness, and healthy workplaces, while recognizing that there are no one-size-fits-all solutions. To increase awareness and knowledge of the causes, signs, and symptoms of psychological distress, self-care, and the importance of asking for help. To offer tools to leaders at all levels to assist them in supporting their teams and in their own self-care. To adopt or continue with your self-care practices so you're able to meet the challenges in the coming days, months, and years. So this webinar is for you, it's for us, so that we can discuss ways to support our health in difficult times. So let us all inspire one another and commit to making our self-care, and certainly mine, a priority in order to support our colleagues, our families, our organization, and ourselves. Donc, un gros merci à tous pour participer au webinaire. Et puis là, je vais tourner la parole à pardon? Emily.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Kelly. Your leadership is so valuable in supporting public safety personnel's mental health. I would like to take a moment to introduce my co-moderator, Melanie Waugh, who's the project manager of workplace wellness and employee well-being, who will be your French voice for today. Melanie, if you wanted to take a moment to turn your video on so people can see you. Perfect. Thank you so much, Melanie. Okay, so today's town hall will be presented bilingually. A handout is available to you in the handout box of the presentation in either French only or English only, for you to follow along in the language you feel most comfortable. Throughout the presentation, you're free to submit your questions through the question box in English or French, and we'll do our best to answer as many as we can. Now let me introduce, I'll let Melanie repeat that in French, please.
Oui, bonjour tout le monde. Donc, l'Assemblée d'aujourd'hui va être présentée dans les 2 langues officielles. Un document sur la présentation d'aujourd'hui est disponible en français et en anglais pour vous dans la boîte de documents à distribuer que vous retrouverez sur votre écran. Vous pouvez donc imprimer ou suivre avec le document qui convient le plus à votre niveau de confort dans la langue de votre choix. Durant toute la présentation, vous êtes libre de soumettre les questions dans la boîte questions, dans la langue de votre choix, donc en français ou en anglais. Et nous tenterons tout au long du webinaire de répondre au plus de questions possibles. Maintenant, laissez-moi vous présenter Megan Provost, qui est directrice au mieux-être en milieu de travail et bien-être des employés au Service correctionnel du Canada.
Thank you. Now, let me introduce our presenter, Megan Provost, Director, Workplace Wellness and Employee Wellbeing at Correctional Service Canada. Megan, go ahead.
Thank you so much, Emily, and thank you, Melanie. I believe that soon people will be able to see my screen. Perfect, thank you. And thank you as well, Commissioner, for your words today. Before I begin, I also wanted to take an opportunity to thank Melanie and the AAP CISM team at CSC for their support in this presentation, as well as the Steering Committee on Mental Health Injuries for this opportunity to have this webinar. Finally, thank you so much to CIPSRT for co-hosting this initiative along with us. I also want to quickly mention that when we're talking today, we know that the situation is changing. It's going to be a theme throughout my presentation. So our conversation today really reflects the information that we have at this moment, and things may change in the future. So today, I'm going to take just a few minutes to discuss the tools that we have to support ourselves and our colleagues during this ever-changing situation. I'll talk a little bit about resiliency as well as the mental health continuum. La pandémie avait un impact sur chaque personne au Service correctionnel du Canada, même si ces impacts étaient différents. La situation actuelle est difficile pour plusieurs raisons, telles que mentionnées sur l'écran. La pandémie et maintenant le processus de façonner la nouvelle normalité nous affecte tous de façon différente, mais c'est vrai que nous sommes tous affectés. Maslow's hierarchy of needs provides one model that demonstrates why we are impacted by the current situation. Many employed Canadians prior to the pandemic were perhaps lucky to spend more energy on the needs at the higher or the top part of this pyramid, those for love and belonging, esteem, and self-actualization. However, due to our current situation, that energy may be shifted. We may be worried about getting sick, getting our loved ones sick, or getting people for whom we're responsible sick. We might not be worried, we may be worried about the future and what the future holds. Or we might just not be sleeping very well and we're not meeting our basic physiological needs. Ça, c'est un modèle de psychologie. Le programme de AVPM fournit une autre option pour nous, un autre vocabulaire, qui permettent des conversations authentiques pour communiquer nos soucis pendant cette période de grands changements. Avec le continuum, nous pouvons parler la même langue, même si nous sommes, même pendant des périodes quand nous sommes blessés, malades ou en santé. In addition to having words to communicate the way the situation is impacting us, we know that there are practical tools that can help support our own mental wellness as well as the wellness of our colleagues. Some of these tools are maybe at the lower end of that Maslow's pyramid, and they include things like getting a good 8 hours of sleep. Of course, I say that perhaps with a smile. 8 hours of sleep would be lovely. Exercise, even if it's going for a walk at lunch or before or after your shift. And of course, eating well, getting a balanced diet, fruits and vegetables, lean protein, while trying to limit sugar, caffeine, and alcohol. Other tools, for example, connection with others and mindfulness, whether it be a mindfulness practice or meditation, allow us an opportunity to choose to put our energy on different measures that can protect our mental health. In addition, we know that as an organization and as individuals, over the last 14 to 15 weeks, we have had successes that have allowed us to continue and to thrive, or at least survive throughout the period of change and the pandemic. We can continue to build on these successes as we navigate through this period of continuous change. Une des stratégies les plus importantes est de se concentrer sur ce qu'on peut contrôler. Maintenant, la situation est fluide et la fluidité est déstabilisante. Les gouvernants prennent des décisions qui nous touchent différemment. Ou peut-être que vous voyez quelqu'un en magasin qui ne porte pas un masque et vous portez votre masque toujours. Peut-être vos collègues continuent à faire de la covoiturage. Les décisions des autres peuvent causer les frustrations ou l'anxiété pour nous. La solution est de se concentrer sur ce qu'on peut contrôler. Nous pouvons contrôler nos attitudes. Nous pouvons contrôler ce que nous faisons pour notre sécurité. Nous pouvons contrôler ou nous pouvons trouver de la joie dans des choses que nous faisons. Nous pouvons contrôler notre utilisation des médias sociaux et des médias en général. Et finalement, nous pouvons contrôler nos décisions au sujet de la distinction sociale. I want to thank you for your time today. As we, as CSC and other public safety personnel, employees, we recognize that we have tools, whether new tools that I shared today or tools that we are already aware of, that we can use to support ourselves and our colleagues during these challenging and ever-changing times. For CSC employees, on the next 2 slides, you will find resources in both French and English that can support you if you would like more information. Finally, before I end today, I just wanted to acknowledge that June 27th is PTSD Awareness Day in Ontario, and 2020 marks the 40th anniversary of the inclusion of PTSD in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual. That is, that the PTSD was acknowledged as a mental illness. More information about these 2 events are available on CIPSRT's website. So thank you so much, everybody. Again, I hope I shared some tools or reminded you of tools that we have to support ourselves and our colleagues in our mental wellness throughout this period of change and crisis. With that, I will turn it back to Emily and the panel for our discussion.
Dr. Megan, and thank you for that excellent presentation. Now I'd like to welcome our panelists to join with video and microphone, if you would be so kind. Wonderful. I think we're just waiting on one more person. There we are. All right. So I'm going to do introductions for everybody here. Please feel free to correct me if I get anything wrong. I won't be offended. I'm going to start with the person next to me on the video, which is Natalie Dufresne-Meek. She's the Director General for Security for Correctional Service Canada.
Hi, bonjour tout le monde.
Next, we have Rose Richardelli. She is a professor of sociology and coordinator for criminology at Memorial University of Newfoundland.
Hello.
Then we have Richard Doyle, who is a registered nurse and president of the Professional Institute of Public Safety, Professional Institute of the Public Service of Canada. Hello, Richard. Ooh.
Bonjour.
Aha, there we go. All right, hello. Next, we have Catherine Balumar, who is the Director of Reintegration for Correctional Service Canada.
Bonjour
And
tout le monde.
lastly, we have Lieutenant Colonel retired Dr. Alexandra Heber, Chief of Psychiatry for Veterans Affairs Canada and Chair of the CIPSRT COVID-19 Readiness Resource Project.
Hi, everyone.
You'll just bear with me 1 second. I'm going to put up questions that we had pre-submitted. All right. So hopefully you guys can see that question there. We are going to start with the first question. It is workers had to transition to manage the changes for essential workers, and now they are transitioning to the new normal. How do we maintain self-care in this ever-changing environment? I'll let Melanie give that to us in French.
Oui, donc les employés ont dû gérer une première transition pour faire face aux changements qui touchent les travailleurs essentiels. Et maintenant, ils sont de nouveau en processus de transition vers la nouvelle normalité. Comment peut-on continuer à prendre soin de soi?
So I'm going to start with Natalie on that question. For our panelists, please feel free to answer in the language in which you're most comfortable, or if you want to answer bilingually, go ahead.
Great. Thank you so much, Emily. Bonjour tout le monde. This morning, one of my staff sent me, sent actually our whole team a quote, which he does every Monday, and it really struck me actually for today's panel discussion. You can't stop the waves, but you can learn to surf, Joseph Goldstein. And I think we've, the reality of the situation over the last few months has really come to bear with respect to this particular quote. You know, how you take care of yourself, how you maintain self-care in this changing environment, I think is really about going within and understanding what your needs are and sharing those needs with your colleagues, with your management team, with your staff, with your family and friends, so that you can obtain from them the support that you need and what you need to manage well, to manage in a healthy way. And if you have the care of others, so for example, if you're a manager, if you're a supervisor, you have colleagues around you, friends, family, it's important to ask questions of people, ask them what they need, realize that not everyone is going to need the same thing in order to manage through this kind of a situation, so through a pandemic, and be healthy through it. And so you need to be able to try to adapt. So as an example, I realized very early on, I had just started a new job when the pandemic struck. and I'm someone who thrives on routine. And until I developed a bit of a routine for myself, I was frankly struggling a little bit, you know, maybe not eating at the right times or when I normally would be eating, just to try to do as much as I could. And so a few colleagues pointed that out to me, and I was able to adapt quickly with the support of others and put a routine in place that was a little more healthful for myself. So important that you are, you know, aware of your environment and aware of yourself so that you can take care of yourself, but also take care of others. Maybe I'll turn it over to another colleague. Thank you.
Rose, why don't you go ahead and go next?
Okay, what I would say here, most importantly, is I think in maintaining, I think we need to recognize that the environment is ever changing. And I think particularly for individuals who are these essential workers, which is pretty well everyone who's working in correctional services, one of the things I think to remember is that we need to all cut ourselves a little bit of a break, particularly because the environment is constantly changing, and anyone who was essential during this initial period has not felt that, they felt that life change, and it's almost been busier and it hasn't calmed down. So they haven't experienced the same pause that the rest of us have experienced in the world today, where we've had no choice. Particularly, all my travel has stopped, everything has stopped, and I've been able to take some more time to reflect and conceptualize how to move forward. And for essential workers, there hasn't been that pause, there hasn't been that change. People around them are transitioning in different ways, but they're still going forward in this essential service provision manner, which makes it difficult to retain self-care, but also it can be hard to remember and to give ourselves that space for not being able to do these things at that particular point in time as we try to adapt to everything going on around us. So I think keeping that in mind, it's a new normal, but it's a constant new normal. You know, we're kind of in wave one, maybe talking about a wave two. We're talking about a lot of changes in the institutions, a lot of changes in the community, and there's going to be a lot of flexibility in adapting to that. And it's okay if we don't have the answers, and it's okay if we find ourselves struggling to take the time that we need for ourselves, but there has to be additional effort on top of that. And we always have to do that within the context that everything around us has changed, but perhaps for people in those essential service positions, those changes are not going to be that sort of calming change that other people have experienced with the pandemic.
Thank you, Rose. Richard, if you would like to answer.
Effectivement, lors de la première transition, tout a été très vite, très rapidement. L'organisation a dû prendre des décisions en partenariat avec les syndicats, avec les travailleurs, les autres collègues, collaborateurs externes. Présentement, beaucoup de gens travaillent à la maison, travaillent à distance, font du télétravail ou du temps partagé entre travailler en établissement ou travailler à la maison. Oui, certains sont essentiels d'être sur place en établissement et ont subi une grande surcharge de travail. Donc, c'est certain que pour prendre soin de ces gens-là doivent trouver le temps de se reposer, prendre des bonnes habitudes de vie à la maison, pas trop se mettre de stress et de pression. Mais les autres à la maison, bien qu'ils peuvent passer pour des gens qui ne travaillent pas, travaillent énormément. Ça change les routines. Le télétravail, ce que ça amène, c'est qu'on n'est pas obligé d'être au travail nécessairement de 8 à 4 comme on faisait habituellement, mais on peut travailler un peu avant 8 heures, après 4 heures, et puis tout ça. Donc, pour prendre soin de nous dans cette nouvelle réalité, parce que l'organisation travaille présentement à analyser comment on va pouvoir encourager le télétravail et vivre cette nouvelle réalité, il faut se mettre des limites. Il faut respecter ses limites personnelles. Il faut respecter les besoins de sa famille. Mais il faut surtout bien identifier et avoir des bonnes discussions avec les gestionnaires ou avec les employés si on est gestionnaire pour s'assurer des besoins de tous. C'est difficile d'ajouter à ce que Nathalie a dit tantôt, c'était très important et c'était très précis. Mais ce qu'on a appris maintenant avec la première transition suite à cette pandémie, c'est que les communications, puisqu'on n'était pas ensemble, les communications n'ont jamais été aussi importantes et on a réussi à améliorer beaucoup ce processus de communication-là. Donc, il faut continuer à s'engager dans les discussions. Si on est un gestionnaire, être ouvert aux besoins des employés. Si on est un employé, être ouvert aux besoins de l'organisation également, mais il faut bien partager ses besoins et prendre soin de nous à travers tout ça. Puis c'est pas facile, hein? Beaucoup d'employés du service correctionnel sont des employés qui veulent prendre soin des autres, aider les délinquantes, les délinquants à réussir leur réinsertion sociale, prendre soin de leurs collègues souvent, que ce soit par les programmes de PAE ou DSIC ou tout ça, mais ils s'oublient là-dedans. Donc, on prend soin de nous en premier, puis par la suite, on peut aider les autres du mieux qu'on peut.
Merci, Richard. Next, I will have Alex. Go ahead.
Hi, thank you, Emily. Yes, so to go back to some of the points everybody's made, I want to just say that I think one of the most important things to help cope with the constant change that, you know, has really, it's unprecedented, I think, in most people's lives, especially their work lives. But for us to be able to cope with that is to develop and maintain strong and healthy work teams. So the more we have people around us where we work, or again, if our work has become virtual, having those kinds of supportive team members who understand what each other are going through. We know actually from the research that that kind of social support is a critical protective factor to help decrease the risk of developing post-traumatic stress disorder or other trauma-related problems. So those issues around, you know, people who can identify with each other, who can support each other, who can truly understand what each other are going through is really, really important. So I think both for the workers working together to help keep those teams you know, cooperative, but also being able to share what they're going through and reinforce and support each other, and also for leadership to take a role in making sure that those healthy teams are able to work together. Thanks.
Lastly, we'll have Catherine answer the question. En français, s'il vous plaît.
Oui, merci. C'est dur d'ajouter après une panoplie d'informations qui est très pertinent. Je vais peut-être réitérer un petit peu un des commentaires qui a été dit plus en anglais. C'est vraiment au niveau, puis Richard l'a abordé un petit peu, mais c'est vraiment au niveau de se bâtir et de se maintenir un cercle de support, autant au travail qu'à la maison. Une des choses des fois qui peut arriver quand on a un travail comme ça au service essentiel, c'est que des fois on se laisse envahir, des fois même par un sentiment de culpabilité de ne pas en faire assez, soit au travail, soit à la maison. C'est de trouver la balance. Je pense que ce qui est important dans ces situations-là pour ne pas se faire envahir ou se laisser envahir par ce sentiment de culpabilité-là, c'est de trouver cette balance-là de support autant au travail, dans son milieu de travail, par nos collègues, nos gestionnaires, les gens avec qui on vit ça au travail et aussi à la maison pour être capable de, comme je dis, de balancer ce sentiment de culpabilité-là, soit d'en faire assez ou pas assez d'un côté ou de l'autre. Donc, c'est vraiment de chercher ce support-là autant au travail puis à la maison. Je pense que c'est important pour des gens, des travailleurs essentiels qui en font beaucoup. Puis comme Richard il disait, c'est des gens qui aident beaucoup. C'est souvent des gens qui ont un rôle important au travail, mais important aussi dans la famille. Donc, d'aller chercher les deux côtés comme ça du support, autant de parler puis d'exprimer nos sentiments de culpabilité puis le déchirement qu'on vit au travail et à la maison, que d'être là pour écouter puis entendre ce que les gens autour de nous ils peuvent faire pour nous supporter et pour nous expliquer eux aussi ce qu'on vit. Donc, c'est ce que j'ajouterai aujourd'hui en ce moment.
Merci, Catherine. All right, we're going to move on to the second question. Melanie, if you would go. Oh, did I lose her? Mélanie?
Oui, excusez-moi, vous m'entendez bien?
Yeah, go ahead with the question.
Pardon. Donc, de quelle façon les organisations peuvent-elles aider les employés à traverser la période d'incertitude actuelle?
So in English, how can organizations help staff navigate the uncertainty of this current situation? And I'm going to start with Alex, please.
Thanks, Emily. So I guess, you know, to build on what we've talked about earlier, especially around the workplace and people needing support in the workplace, I think it's really important for leadership and the organization to be aware that there are a lot of things they can do up front. I mean, I think organizations are pretty good about helping provide supports for people once they're, you know, either they have to take off on sick leave or they, you know, they're developing issues and they need access to care. But in a situation like this, it can also be very helpful for leadership to be putting in resources up front. So one is, as I said earlier, to be able to help support healthy teams in the workplace, and as much as possible, once those teams form, to kind of keep them together so that they go through experiences together and can continue to support each other. I think another way is for leadership to just be present, you know your people, and really foster two-way communication, because by doing that, the leadership in the organization will, you know, they'll be able to keep abreast of what's actually going on the front lines. What are people dealing with on a day-to-day basis? It also helps those people feel like they're being heard and like what they're doing and all the hard work and the sacrifice that they're putting into this is really, you know, it's recognized. Recognition of people working in situations like this by leadership is very, very important. Thanks.
We'll go to Catherine next.
Oui, merci. Pour moi, une des choses que les organisations peuvent faire pour la période d'incertitude, puis c'est vraiment aussi d'être capable de, oui, il y a souvent beaucoup de focus sur le travail, les tâches, qu'est-ce qu'on ouvre, qu'est-ce qu'on fait, mais je pense que ce qui est important aussi, c'est de comprendre et d'accepter que les employés, ils ont passé à travers, puis ils vivent encore la pandémie de certaines façons. Donc, c'est vraiment d'être capable d'aller chercher le pouls chez les gens, de voir, d'aller les chercher, de comprendre où nos employés, si on est un gestionnaire, sont à quel niveau? Est-ce qu'ils sont en santé physique, en santé mentale? Est-ce que, comment ils passent à travers ça? Il y a des employés qui peuvent passer à travers ça facilement. Là, la switch à on, la switch à off, il n'y a aucun problème. Il y a d'autres employés qui ont été affectés financièrement. Leurs familles ont pu être affectées par la maladie aussi. Donc, c'est vraiment, je pense que c'est une responsabilité des leaders d'être capable de reconnaître que c'est pas tout le monde qui a vécu la pandémie, soit de la même façon que eux l'ont vécu, qu'il y a des différences aussi dans les employés. Donc, je pense qu'en traversant cette période-là de réouverture ou de transition, c'est de comprendre, d'aller chercher le pouls, de normaliser, de comprendre comment, à quel point que les gens y sont, de s'adapter, d'être flexible aussi en mettant en place des mécanismes pour permettre les employés de prendre des pauses quand ils ont besoin ou de s'adapter aussi à la nouvelle réalité. Donc, d'être flexible. Pour ça, ça va demander une communication effectivement de la part des leaders puis de la part des employés, d'être ouverts, d'être capable de parler de ça, de comment chaque personne a vécu ça. Je pense que ça va permettre à l'organisation de comprendre l'aspect humain à travers la tâche de réouverture, d'y arriver de façon plus positive.
Rose, we'll have you answer next.
Hi, thank you. Uncertainty, I had just actually taken a couple notes when other people were speaking, so I don't want to repeat anyone's points. But I think one of the best ways that an organization itself can help deal with the uncertainty of the situation is through really transparent policies and protocols around COVID-19. The amount of uncertainty people have about what to do, you know, it's cyclical, and it's not just institution, it's also people working in community corrections and even in the administrative offices. There's that concern about getting contracting COVID-19 at work. Then there's the concern about bringing it home to the family, and then there's the concern about bringing it back to work. And especially then in the institutions, but halfway houses and a lot of other facilities, even the offices, the cubicles and headquarters, you know, it would flow through there very, very quickly. So the concern is everywhere and there's uncertainty everywhere. So transparent policies. What do we do with COVID? What do we do if we come into contact? What do we do with return to work? What we do with prison? And not just for staff, because if there's certainty around policies, it can help, you know, solidify that uncertainty, but it's also for families. And it's also for the prisoners and the releasees. So if everyone's aware, then everyone can work together in order to find ways to ensure that that fear of contagion is a little bit more managed, and then people know what to do in moving practices forward when they come into experience a threat. And that's everything around COVID. There's so much uncertainty, and there's a lot of uncertainty when it comes to public perceptions of what's going on in the institutions and in CSC as well. So it's managing the public pressures as well that are kind of unfolding or becoming engrossed into those uncertainties, because with the public pressures and all the information in the public, there's also more information that may not be correct or could be inaccurate that will also inform uncertainties and create doubt. So it's having a space to go to get the correct answers to your questions, one presented with challenging information. So even within the organization, so in this case within CIPSRT itself, to have a place where information can be, where clear policies and protocols and practices can be found without a doubt. I think that will help a lot with navigating some of the uncertainty around the current situation, and then that will allow people to take their focus onto the things that they do have to deal with, which are again very uncertain on the day-to-day with working in correctional services. So being able to reorient your attention away from COVID slightly and back to the many, many other things that are being dealt with on a day-to-day basis when working in correctional services.
That's Rose. Next, we'll have Richard.
Oui, effectivement, une bonne planification est importante, une planification du retour au travail, prendre le temps. Dans la première phase de changement, tout est allé très, très, très rapidement. Les organisations doivent prendre le temps de bien faire les choses. On voit dans les communautés qu'il y a des déconfinements, des retours à la normale progressive. Si on parle des milieux comme le service correctionnel, il y a d'autres particularités, les territoires où on a les établissements, les gens qui vont venir en visite, tout ça. Donc, on prend le temps de bien planifier les choses. Faut penser différemment également, puis travailler différemment. À partir de quand que quelqu'un est à la maison et a accès à ses courriels 24 heures sur 24, 7 jours sur 7, il ne faut pas anticiper comme gestionnaire que tout le monde va être devant son ordinateur ou a son téléphone intelligent avec lui ou avec elle, même les fins de semaine. Et je dis ça avec un sourire, bien entendu. Mais il faut penser que les gens doivent établir des limites. Donc ça amène d'autres défis. Établir des objectifs clairs. Dans les communications, si un employé également a besoin d'avoir un peu de temps parce que pour s'occuper de la famille et puis des autres éléments, hors COVID, parce qu'il ne faut pas oublier qu'on vivait avant le COVID. Donc, il faut continuer à vivre aussi pendant le COVID. C'est juste qu'on a des éléments de stress additionnels qui viennent sur nous, à la maison, au travail. J'ai été en établissement dernièrement et puis juste pendant la période du repas, de constater que les gens mangent un par table, tout étendu dans toute la salle à dîner. Ça change la dynamique puisque le temps de dîner, c'était le temps où entre les différents départements, on prenait le temps d'échanger, de faire des blagues, de relaxer, de goûter le repas que l'autre collègue avait préparé. Donc, ces choses-là, c'est des choses qui font partie du bien-être, du mieux-être en milieu de travail. Puis, il faut essayer de trouver d'autres alternatives pour qu'on puisse quand même être bien au travail, tout le monde, et tout en respectant les éléments sécuritaires associés au COVID, mais aussi les autres défis associés au travail en milieu carcéral.
Merci, Richard. All right, last word to you, Natalie.
Great, thank you. And I take Richard's point. He's a few times signaled to me when I shouldn't have been responding to emails, but maybe relaxing a little bit. And I really appreciate that from him. I have an expression that I use often in the workplace, which is stay calm and CSC on. So I think staying calm in the wake of the uncertainty is very helpful for people. Certainly, I think folks need that from their leadership. They need clear, transparent, and authentic messaging from all levels of management. Folks are not looking for the ticky boxes. They're looking to ensure that the messages that they're getting from their managers, their frontline supervisors, is genuine, and understanding that, you know, people really do care about what happens to them and their families. And also ensuring that managers have the right tools to facilitate discussions with their employees. Sometimes we think that because folks are in a management position that they actually have all of the answers, and they don't. And so ensuring that, you know, we equip our managers well to deal with a situation such as the pandemic certainly is very important. I heard the words humanity and flexibility, and I think that those really should go without saying, but I know that in an environment such as corrections, things go very rapidly and move fast, and you're dealing with a variety of situations throughout the day, and sometimes we need to remind ourselves of that. So I think that's a really important piece to focus on as well. But certainly the communication is very important, and understanding that there are certain stressors that folks feel. For example, you know, what do I do with my daycare situation this summer if I'm a worker that's working from home at the moment? And even though we may not have all of the answers right now as management, and we're working on those things, it's important to hear those situations that people are living, and really just try to provide as much support and flexibility as we can. Thanks.
We have a question from our audience that I will pose. I'm going to pose it first to our CSC panelists, and then I'll allow our academic panelists to follow up with just some information. The question is, do you believe the CSC model of self-care, is robust enough for the front line, and how can you deliver this information to the frontline group? Mélanie, en français?
Oui, en fait, croyez-vous que le modèle actuel d'auto-soin du Service correctionnel du Canada est suffisamment solide et adapté au personnel de première ligne? Et si oui, de quelle façon pouvez-vous partager cette information au personnel de première ligne?
Natalie, I'm afraid I'm going to put you on the front line, on the hot seat first here.
No problem, thanks. Actually, it's really important. It's an important question. It's a very good question. Self-care for the front line, I think, is critical. Those folks are the folks that you know, that support the care of inmates and offenders, that support the reintegration of inmates and offenders. And so there are a number of services certainly that we have at CSC. That support that model of care. So the employee assistance program, the critical incident and stress management program, our return to work, our duty to accommodate program, you know, the Office of Conflict Management to help support some difficult decisions that sometimes need to occur in order for folks to be well and stay well in the workplace. The communication with frontline staffs, especially for folks who work in an institution, can sometimes be difficult, given that not everyone has access to a computer readily, like, you know, those of us who work in an office environment. So we need to find some innovative ways, you know, to reach those folks. And I think it's very important that we involve frontline staff in the decision making about how we communicate that information to them and how we reach them. So, for example, through shift briefings, when folks are, you know, doing a shift exchange, whether it be through other means, through colleagues, through different forums. So there are a number of ways that we are currently reaching out to folks through video, for example. We're working on a mental health application that folks will also be able to access outside of the workplace during off hours, which, you know, can also be helpful. But I think involving our frontline colleagues in the development of those kinds of tools is critical to ensure that we're getting them what they need.
Richard, you're next.
Oui, et ce qui est difficile également, c'est de répondre aux besoins de tous. On a différentes équipes de travail à l'intérieur des établissements. Oui, les rencontres quotidiennes pour discuter du travail à faire dans la journée, de ce qui s'est passé dans les dernières 24 heures ou durant le week-end. Tout ça, c'est important. Puis, de se donner le temps aussi de discuter des autres choses, de souligner. Ça peut être aussi simple des fois que de souligner des anniversaires ou des événements heureux, aussi des fois un peu malheureux là, quand on peut avoir des choses négatives qui se passent dans nos vies. C'est difficile d'avoir un modèle d'auto-soin parfait parce que je pense qu'on a 17 000 employés au service correctionnel. On pourrait avoir 17 000 modèles d'auto-soin différents qui seraient parfaits pour chacun des individus. C'est sûr qu'on travaille fort, les syndicats, avec la gestion, l'organisation, pour s'assurer que le bien-être des employés soit là à travers les différents comités du mieux-être, santé, sécurité, retour au travail, besoin de prendre des mesures d'adaptation. Mais il faut que les gens se sentent à l'aise de pouvoir parler de leurs besoins avec leurs gestionnaires, de ne pas se sentir jugés et par les gestionnaires et les collègues également. Donc, la prévention de la violence en milieu de travail, de la discrimination, et puis tout ça, c'est important. Puis ça amène son lot de défis. On peut avoir un milieu de travail qui est très stressant à l'occasion dû à certains événements ou certains patients délinquants qui peuvent être moins faciles à gérer en certains temps de crise ou certaines décompensations. Fait que tout ça, il faut être capable d'essayer de prendre un petit pas de recul puis de regarder vraiment qu'est-ce que moi je dois faire pour me sentir bien là-dedans et le faire comprendre aux gens avec qui on travaille. Mais ça amène un grand défi, l'auto-soin. Et je pense que si les gens, personnellement, identifient leurs besoins et travaillent localement, c'est pas obligé d'être des grandes décisions prises par le national. Hein. Ça peut être des décisions, des initiatives locales qui font du bien aux gens localement selon les besoins et la réalité locale ou de la communauté d'un fois. Mais ça peut être des petits gestes qui vont contribuer à aider les gens à se sentir bien et à prendre soin d'eux autres, même dans le milieu de travail et en dehors également, c'est bien entendu.
Catherine.
There's very little I can add. Richard and Natalie really responded entirely. What I could add, I guess, is blending both what Natalie and Richard said, is that there are a lot of things available in CSC outside of CSC. Richard touched on the shared responsibility and how it doesn't have to be large national initiatives. So I think there are some things, there's always room for improvement. We can always do more. Each employee, each team, each local work site could create their own recipe book, and then each employee, each team, each manager, leader could choose from there. So I think there are a lot in CSC. I won't repeat what Richard and Natalie said, but I think it's a question of each employee. We know ourselves, and it's making the resources available, both within CSC, the larger initiatives, and those that are smaller and more locally. And in the end, it's also, like I said earlier, it's creating your own local and professional and personal support system that you can also choose from in order to practice self-care.
I'm going to weigh in, let our academics weigh in on some best practices for getting these messages of self-care out. Alex, I'll start with you.
Thanks, Emily. I want to go back, first of all, to something that Natalie said when she spoke about, that whatever the CSC model of self-care is, it's very, very important that those frontline staff who are experiencing the stress, that they have input into that model. I think, again, the more people have input and they can bring that frontline experience to whatever is developed, the more it's going to have meaning for them. So I think that's the first point, is really making sure that involvement is there. I think the other thing I want to come back to is, we talk about self-care and it sounds very isolated, but in fact, a huge part of self-care is mutual support. And again, as everybody said here, one of the most important things is that people develop those groups, or perhaps it's with one other individual, where they can get mutual support that helps them when they go through a stressful experience to realize, oh, other people share that, and it's, you know, maybe it's not so bad. Or when I talk to my colleague about it, they actually have some advice because they've had a similar experience, and that was very helpful to me. So that idea of self-care also includes mutual support.
Alex. And Rose, I'll give the last word to you on this one.
I actually think that everyone has summed it up quite well. And because I don't know the CSC models of self-care very well, I don't think it's appropriate for me to actually speak to that. But I do appreciate what everyone else has put forward. Thank you.
All right, so we are just getting near the end of our time here. I'm going to offer you each a chance to wrap up with some final thoughts just on what we've been discussing and about the importance of self-care. So I'm going to start back with you, Rose. Any final thoughts you have on the importance of self-care and how we can care for ourselves during a crisis like this?
I think that the most important thing is that we can all take a second to slow down and just recognize that everyone is working during a pandemic. So it's not like we're sitting in this space where there's a pandemic all around us, and everyone's trying to do the best they can. And maybe one of the first steps towards self-care is everyone just kind of cutting themselves a little bit of slack and recognizing that it's not always going to be that easy and straightforward. And as Natalie had said as well, which I think is really important, is to stay calm within it to the best of their abilities. The challenge is that COVID and everything that comes with COVID is going to affect each person differently, and it's going to cause a different amount of uncertainty and stress, and it's going to compromise people's well-beings in different ways. And that's okay. It's okay for it to affect different people differently. And the most important thing is to recognize that in the center of it, you're doing your job in the best you can for your colleagues, for society, for those in your care and custody or under your supervision, and for everyone around you. So in that role, which is an exceptionally important role, it's okay to cut yourself a little bit of slack if things aren't going the way you prefer them to go. And also to recognize, especially for people who are working in community corrections, that with all the additional precautions and challenges and everything else, one of the things that my research has shown me is people often feel that they can't do enough for their clients as it is. And it's particularly important to not be hard on yourself in this environment and during this time, because there's less you're going to be able to do. And that's the same in the institutions. And I know that everyone wants to do best by everyone around them, but it's okay if sometimes your best is not as good as you want it to be. And I think that's really, really important, because we all put a lot of pressure on ourselves as well. And I think I'll end there.
Rose. Richard, any final thoughts?
On a parlé beaucoup de leadership ici, et pour moi, je pense que le leadership, c'est l'affaire de tout le monde. Chaque employé de cette organisation-là ou de toute autre organisation est un leader en dedans de lui ou en dedans d'elle. On a tous quelque chose à apporter à nos équipes de travail. On a tous des qualités différentes qui sont complémentaires souvent. Donc, quand vient le temps de prendre soin de nous et prendre soin de nous en tant qu'individu et en tant qu'équipe, je pense qu'il faut être à l'écoute des gens. Il ne faut pas s'attendre à ce qu'un chef de département, un chef d'unité soit la seule personne qui a les réponses. Il faut contribuer à adresser le problème nous autres-mêmes et à chercher les réponses et à trouver les moyens de se sentir bien et de résoudre tout ça en équipe. On l'a vu dans le PowerPoint, l'isolement, s'isoler puis pas contacter les autres, ça peut venir un défi puis ça cause plus de problèmes. Il faut réussir à le faire, malgré la nouvelle façon de travailler, que plusieurs gens vont être seuls à la maison, puis tout ça. Donc, il ne faut pas hésiter à avoir des contacts peut-être fréquents avec ces employés-là pour s'assurer de leur bien-être, s'assurer qu'ils comprennent bien que leurs besoins sont adressés. Les moyens technologiques s'en viennent là, tranquillement, pas vite. On le voit ici, on est en mesure de faire des webinaires ou d'utiliser d'autres outils. On sait que le département d'informatique travaille là-dessus pour le service correctionnel, de se voir. Juste se parler, c'est bien, mais quand on est capable de se voir, ben c'est encore mieux, ça amène un contact. humain pour les gens en milieu de travail. Continuer à travailler en équipe, à partager l'information. Ça fait partie du succès, je crois. Alors, et prendre soin de nous avec les bonnes habitudes de vie individuellement, faire en sorte que quand on arrive dans une situation de travail, parce qu'on ne peut plus dire un milieu de travail, parce que le milieu de travail, des fois, est à la maison avec les enfants qui crient et qui jouent alentour de nous. Dans notre milieu de travail, on est peut-être mieux outillés ou mieux préparés à bien faire le travail et à pas se brûler au travail non plus. Merci.
Merci, Richard. Catherine, you may go ahead.
Oui, merci. Je vais poursuivre en français. Donc, évidemment, comme on a dit depuis le début, ça fait maintenant 3-4 mois, les choses vont vite. Ça recommence à ralentir, mais faut pas. Ça va continuer. On n'a pas fini encore. Même la réouverture, le retour à la nouvelle normalité. Donc, je pense que c'est important de continuer à prendre soin de soi, d'accepter le support qui nous est offert, de ne pas hésiter non plus à aller le chercher, à le demander. C'est important de se permettre justement des moments pour recharger la batterie, s'accepter aussi, prendre le temps d'arrêter puis de regarder tout ce qu'on a fait depuis les 12-16 dernières semaines puis se dire, oh mon Dieu, oui, j'en ai fait beaucoup puis ça n'a pas toujours été facile, mais il faut se les donner les tapes dans le dos puis il faut donner les tapes dans le dos à nos collègues aussi. Moi, personnellement, dans les dernières semaines, en lisant certains rapports de situation ou recevoir des courriels, j'en ai lu puis entendu plein d'histoires des gens, des employés au service correctionnel qui ont été, qui ont vraiment été above and beyond, là, qui ont été vraiment l'extra mille malgré l'incertitude, la fatigue. C'est incroyable comment que les employés qui étaient au front, ils en ont fait des choses extraordinaires pour continuer le travail, pour soutenir nos clients, pour se soutenir les uns les autres. Donc, c'est important de se le faire, de se taper, de se donner la tape dans le dos puis de reconnaître nos collègues. C'est important. L'été arrive, prendre nos vacances, profiter du soleil, vraiment recharger notre batterie. Puis mettre en application les outils qu'on a toutes vus à travers les différentes formations qu'on a eues pour continuer à toujours être conscient de où on est puis de pratiquer l'auto-soin. Donc, accepter le support puis aller le chercher, c'est important qu'on continue dans les prochaines étapes de ce qui nous attend.
We've just got a couple minutes left. Alex, I'll go to you next, and then Natalie, I'll give you the last word. So Alex, go ahead.
Okay, very quickly, and thank you everybody for your comments. I guess the only thing I'd like to add is that to say something about how the job of everyone working in CSC, whatever your level, whatever your role, is incredibly important. And you can take great pride in the fact that you've stepped up when your organization, your clients, and your country, quite frankly, needed you. So I want to say thank you for that.
Alex and Natalie, last word to you.
Boy, it's hard to follow that one up for sure. I mean, you know, that's just so well said. A former boss of mine who's now retired used to say, you know, staff are the cornerstone of the organization. And certainly that is truer now than it ever was. And I want to just say that I appreciate the smile that came on Rosa's face when her daughter walked in. You know, so those are the things that we're grappling with these days, you know, Fido barking in the background and such. And I mean, I think when she says, you know, you have to cut yourself some slack, I think we have to be gentle with ourselves because these things are part of our humanity. They're part of our everyday. And it's okay. We're all in this together. You know, I guess I asked myself a few questions about self-care. You know, what do I need to be well? I think that's a question that we have to continually ask ourselves. What's within my control and what's within the control of others? Qu'est-ce que je peux faire pour aider les autres? So what can I do to help others care and others take care of themselves? how can I contribute to others' wellness? And really, it's okay in the end to ask yourself, is this work for me? Some folks have realized, I think, through this, and I was talking to a staff person this morning who said, you know what, our folks on the front line have done so much and have been so available, you know, at risk to themselves and to their families over the last couple of months. I'm actually glad I wasn't working the front line these days, because I'm not sure that I would have survived it. So I think it's okay to ask ourselves those questions and be honest and frankly be gentle with ourselves. Thank you.
Okay, I want to thank all of our panelists, our presenter, and the commissioner for giving their time today for this town hall. It's been a wonderful opportunity to partner with CSC. A survey about this town hall will appear after the session, and a copy of the video will be emailed to all attendees and all people that registered. CIPSRT does not have permission to share the PowerPoint presentation, but you can contact the individual presenter if you have any questions. Mélanie, en français?
Oui, donc j'aimerais remercier tous les panélistes, la présentatrice et la commissaire pour avoir donné de leur temps pour ce webinaire aujourd'hui. Un sondage apparaîtra à la fin de la session, donc vous pouvez le voir à l'écran en ce moment. Et une copie de la vidéo sera envoyée par courriel à tous les participants demain. Donc, l'Institut canadien de recherche et de traitement en sécurité publique n'a pas la permission de partager le PowerPoint, donc la présentation qu'on a vue en début de webinaire, mais vous pouvez contacter les individus et la présentatrice si vous avez des questions. Merci.
I'd like to personally thank Mélanie for being my French voice today. I appreciate it. I just want to end by letting everyone know, as Megan did, that June 27th is PTSD Awareness Day in Ontario. CIPSRT has launched a national campaign to wear teal in recognition of people, especially those in public safety positions, that struggle with PTSD. We encourage you all to participate by posting a picture of yourself in teal with the hashtag #WearTealChallenge. Again, thank you to our panelists and presenters, and everyone stay safe and take care.